so you're losing an hour of sleep probably doesn't help matters in how your brain is perceiving things, and it throws people off for a while. Just like any night of restless or poor sleep, which is pretty much all of them for us, but because we're old now.
Yeah.
Hit it.
All right. You guys were kind of right about the daylight savings time thing.
Okay.
Ooh.
So, over the weekend, most of us experienced something small but strangely disruptive: daylight savings time. The clock moved forward 1 hour. Objectively, it's just 60 minutes, but subjectively, it rarely feels that simple. People feel tired, disoriented, the rhythm feels slightly off, and that raises a deeper question. Because if one artificial hour can affect us this much, then maybe time isn't something we experience as consistently as we assume. But here's the bigger thought: clocks measure time, but humans experience time. So the discussion becomes, why does time feel like it moves differently at different stages of our lives?
Okay. Well, if I may, Michael, before we get into this discussion, this is yet another opportunity for me to pimp out my idea of freedom time. So
Yes.
I'm just going to do that. What fixes all of this for all of us is one time zone for the United States, with the exception of Alaska and Hawaii. But our time zone should be called Freedom Time. We should not time change. Alaska and Hawaii can be on Freedom West, 3 hours behind us. I'm fine with that. But it's just the way it should be. Start a GoFundMe for it. Start a change.org. Call your congressman. I don't care. It's time. As you put it in the pre-show, we talked about this. It is time, exactly. As you put it in the pre-show before we started this, you said it was that it was the one thing China got right, and I would tend to agree. One time zone fixes it all. All right, now that I'm off that soapbox, time is in many ways, I think, just a human construct. So your perception of it most certainly will vary depending on the experience that you're having. I mean, we just finished physical therapy a little while ago. Tell me that the clock wasn't dragging on for you, Beth, as you were going through it.
Well, and she kept me longer because she's evil.
Well, there's that too. But as opposed to, you're doing something that you really enjoy and you look up and 3 hours have gone by and it feels like it's 3 minutes. I think it's just the way the human brain operates. So I don't know how much deeper it is than that. But I mean, as far as how it might relate to the daylight savings time, the fact that we're changing an hour, so you're losing an hour of sleep, probably doesn't help matters in how your brain is perceiving things, and it throws people off for a while. Just like any night of restless or poor sleep, which is pretty much all of them for us, but because we're old now.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Your thoughts, Michael?
Well, first of all, daylight saving time, the people that are online whining about losing an hour, or that somehow an hour is the big difference in their lives, get over it. I mean, I haven't slept a full night's sleep probably since I was 6. So to me, it doesn't matter. I don't know why people make this big deal and why we have this needless discussion twice a year about it. Because ultimately it comes down to a bunch of people like it, a bunch of people don't. Some people think we should have daylight saving time all the time. Some say we shouldn't because I don't want the sun to come up at 4 a.m. in the summer. Like, who cares? You get the same amount of daylight one way or the other. It's just where it's distributed based on the clock. It's just, so what if it gets darker in the evening? That's why we have artificial light. We spend all this money to build these great big lights. Anyway, point is, stop whining about the daylight saving time. The rest of you lemmings. Now here in Arizona, we don't care because we stay on standard time all the time.
It's because we're cool.
Yeah, we are. We are the cool kids. We and Hawaii.
Hot.
Yeah. Well,
did for a while. And
Who
then
did
they
what?
changed it back. Indiana didn't do daylight saving.
I think it was like half of Indiana. That was like
all of it. It was really weird.
Yeah.
I had to go to meeting once in Indiana, and somehow I missed it by 2 hours because I was so screwed up as to what time it actually was there.
Nice.
But that's okay. I didn't get the anyways.
Well, yeah, you showed up at the wrong time.
Yeah.
That was a guy who used to work for. He understood. He's like, yeah, I don't understand it either. But
so I don't. Time is one of those. Obviously, it's a human construct, and people perceive it differently. And as you said, when you're doing something you don't like or you don't want to do, the second hand on that clock is really like the hour hand. It just barely moves. Sometimes you almost swear it's moving backwards. Whether it's, when I was a kid, you'd sit in class, especially when it was a terribly boring class, and it would just drag on. You had that Ben Stein kind of monotone teacher. I'm John Erickson, and this is 7th grade social studies. It was just like, we've all been in that movie that just, you can't wait for it to end because it's really just that bad. That's why it's so relative, I guess. But and then of course when you're having fun, it's like, oh, I just sat down, or when you want that sleep, and the sleep thing is great, a great example, because there have been times where I've gone to sleep, right, and I wake up and I feel totally refreshed. I'm like, man, what a great night's sleep. I look over at the clock; it's 11:45 p.m. I've been asleep for an hour and a half. And I'm like, oh, well,
those are nice.
I guess I'm up now.
Those are nice if you fall right back asleep, where it feels like you've gotten like 4 or 5 hours in like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you fall back asleep again and it feels like, 9 days worth of rest by the time morning hits.
How come though? How come that can happen? And then, but there are the rare nights, and it has happened where I've had the full 8 hours, and I wake up after a full 8 hours, and I mean good, like solid sleep, or so I think, and I wake up, I'm exhausted. I don't even want to get out of bed. I'm like, and I'm dragging through the whole day. Maybe it's my body is just not used to that. So I don't know. We're kind of meandering around the topic, I guess, but it's one of those things where people have different perceptions of time and its relative importance to some people. This could be a broader discussion about, some people. I'm one of those people. I don't know. My mom was very temporal centric, and 5 minutes, being on time is 5 minutes late kind of thing. Mm-hmm. My brother is one of those people that just kind of shows up whenever. I'm one of those people that if you tell me to be there at 7, I'm going to be there at 7 or sooner. Usually I'm there early. Some people just have a different attitude about it. Some are, and then other cultures have different, I know in a lot of Latin cultures, showing up late is a customary thing. Some it's considered extremely rude, to show up too early. We were just at a birthday party over the weekend, and one of the people there said, yeah, I had a party and someone showed up 35 minutes early. Who does that? I wasn't ready. They went on a rant about people that show up too early. So, everybody places a different value on it, I guess, is the kind of the point here, that, and it's unfortunate because that's where some of our conflict can arise, because people, it just goes back to everyone has different value systems and belief systems about everything. And time is obviously one of them. Some of the most bitter arguments that we see online are about daylight saving time versus standard versus permanent daylight saving versus permanent standard. Some people like the change, some don't, and they get, it's like deeply personal. Like it's almost worse than politics. It's crazy. Like if you go if you go on Twitter and you look at this, or Facebook, you should see the slinging of insults and attacks that people have, Dan. It's crazy.
Oh, I've seen them. So here's something that just came to mind as we've meandered through this topic, as you put it, and I don't know if we're directly answering Beth's question or not, but it kind of feels like a bit of a topic that's designed to meander just a little,
Yeah.
just like time meanders sometimes.
Haha.
So I wonder, time is a human construct in many ways, which means the clock is a human construct, and I wonder how much we've messed ourselves up by becoming dependent on the clock. Because like you were saying earlier, where people, they're like upset because the sun will come up at 4 a.m. Well, what happened back before we had clocks? The sun comes up, you get to work. The sun goes
Yeah.
down, you get to bed, except for those who are programmed for third shift to keep a watch over the group for predators and whatnot. Like my wife is, she's programmed for third shift.
Yes.
But because that's actually carried forward. I think we discussed that last time. But yeah, I just got to, and I never really thought about it this way until this conversation right now. I wonder if just the idea of a clock itself breaks us, because I mean, are we really designed for that? I mean, back in the day, the goal was to hunt and gather, reproduce, and do that. It was survive.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Which, didn't rely on a clock. It relied on you making the most of the daylight you had and the resources around you and just getting it done. And your body, our bodies are probably designed better to work with sunrise and sunset than it is to work with an alarm that goes off that we hit snooze on 12 times or throw across the room, depending on our personality.
Yes.
Throw it.
Yeah, I know where you stand on
Mhm.
it. But I've never thought about it in those terms before, but is time itself and trying to constantly track it and constantly be a slave to it doing more harm than good?
Well, there's certainly an argument to be made there. I mean, we used to just, the sun dictated what we did, or the moon, or both. I mean, we had the sundials, and we always measured time in some form, but a lot of times people ran their life based on the sun, the position of the sun and the seasons, and based on what nature was doing around them. And that's kind of how people dictated their life. It was a simpler time.
Well,
But it kind of was.
yeah, and I mean, if you're not tracking a clock like we do now, then there wouldn't be the perception of how fast or slow things are moving. You know what I mean? You would just be going
Sure.
through it. You wouldn't be looking up and going, "Oh my goodness, it's only been 5 minutes. It feels like 10 hours." Because that's just not how you would be wired.
Right.
So yeah, it feels, the more I'm thinking about this as we're talking, the more it feels like we're just breaking ourselves. But we've talked about this in other areas too, where we are probably overcomplicating our existence. And I never thought about time and keeping track of it necessarily being one of them, but perhaps. I mean, I get it. There's no choice anymore. It has to be done
Sure.
based upon just how society is now. We don't work in small groups anymore, although I would argue that maybe we should, but we work globally, so things have to work on the clock now.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any way around it, but and I suppose over time we'll evolve to make that better, but I don't know that we're evolved yet.
Well, here's something. I'm going to change the lane just a little bit because you guys haven't touched on this yet. But don't you think it's different from the way you experience time as a child versus the way you experience time as an adult? And does it have something to do with not just your age, but the proportion of your life that is passed? So, like, if you're 10 years old, 1 year is a tenth of your life. But if you're 50 years old, 1 year is not a tenth of your life. So do you think that plays into it? Or because I think everybody I've ever talked to agrees that the older you get, the quicker it feels like time passes.
Yeah, I was just about to say you could look at it as a tenth of your life or a tenth of your life that's left, depending on where you're at in the process. No, I think it's getting, the perception of it is exponentially faster. We were talking in the chat on this morning's show, Michael, over at TCF, about, I think it was Ashley pointed out that we're only like 4 weeks away from Easter, and she couldn't believe it. Just how fast this year has gone already.
It is. And as you get older, yeah, it's sometimes it seems like time drags, but most of the time, yeah, it does seem like things accelerate. And maybe because, people around you are changing. They, as you get older, you start to see more signs of mortality around you. That, people die or people are getting sick, your parents or your grandparents or whatever. I lost both of my grandparents this decade, all right, in 22 and early 24. And they were 99 and 102 years old, respectively.
Oh, wow.
And then, now my dad died when he was very young. He was only 58, which, is another thing that you think about because as, I'm 10 years away from that. And I'm like, man, and time just seems to sort of accelerate in that. And so you often think about that mortality. And maybe that's what kind of gets that rush into you to go, I got to do this and I've got to do this and I got to do this before, the inevitable happens. And, and it's like, well, okay. But unfortunately you have less time to do things because, as an adult, now you're working, and a lot of people have families or responsibilities outside of just work to do. And that leaves a smaller slice of time to do things. So naturally, since you have less anyway, it's going to seem like whatever little that you have is going to go by very quickly. While it is a perception, there's also just an objective reality to that as well.
That's a fair point. And the older you get, obviously the less time you have to accomplish your goals if you haven't already accomplished them. So there's that pressure too that makes it feel like it's moving even faster.
I was going to ask that. Sorry, go ahead, Michael.
I was just going to say, plus, as we get older, we move slower. We just, we're not, well, I mean, we're just, it's just, again, that's just objective because while we have come up with ways to do things more efficiently than when we were younger, because there's some wisdom built in, our bodies, like if it's physical stuff, our bodies just start to slow down. It's just kind of the reality, and so that's why things also seem like they're going faster because you're going slower. It's sort of an interesting theory of relativity.
That's an interesting point I hadn't thought of as well. What were you going to say, Beth?
Does it feel like it's going faster as we're getting older because we have fewer memorable markers as we age? Like when you're little, there's lots of things, like your birthday is a big deal. Christmas is a big deal. If you grew up in the United States, you had summer vacation. Not every country does that with schooling, but the summer was like, you couldn't wait to get to summer, and it felt like
July. Yeah.
Yeah, like you looked forward to all these events and they were like a huge thing in your memory. And as you get older, they don't hold as much weight. So do you think not having those things that you're constantly looking forward to is part of the reason it feels like it goes by faster?
No, every day with you is a memorable marker.
Aw.
Swish. Nice job, Dan.
Thank you. No, I think I personally feel like I have more memorable moments at this age than as a child, if for no other reason than I have the wisdom to see them. And they don't necessarily need to be the biggest things in the world.
I guess that's
Like,
true. As you get older, you learn to appreciate little things a little bit more than, as a kid. You don't really. It's hard to understand those things. You don't have a frame of reference for them when you're a
Yeah.
kid.
well, you're a weather guy, Mike. I'll give you this example. This morning, during the morning show, I looked out the window of the bunker and the sky was perfectly clear, except for this one little tiny cloud that was hanging there, and there was nothing else around it. And I've never seen a single small solitary cloud just like that any time in my life. And I one of the times when I left the studio for a minute, it was to go outside and look in a more 360. There was
Yeah.
nothing. It was just this one little cloud. And I'll remember that because I've never seen anything like it before. But a simple thing, but
Yeah.
it was so unique. And I've got the wisdom to just look at that and go, that's nature and that's
Sure.
weird and
Uh,
that's cool. I don't know.
nature, yeah, and nature in general. I was going to go there too, just with like just looking at a sunset. I mean, every one of them is a little different, especially here in Arizona. I mean, and you go out, you look at that. When I was a kid, yeah, it was cool. Oh my God, look at you'd see, oh, the sky is like red and like a deep red. Oh, that's neat. But now it's kind of like you really, I don't know, you spend a lot of extra time looking at that sort of thing. And so I don't know. There's just a more of an appreciation, I guess, but that appreciation maybe is also what helps time to move a little faster.
Yeah, that's probably true. Hey, thanks for watching. In the Blind is a news show for Mike and me, and we'd really love it if you could hit the subscribe button, do a thumbs up, leave a comment. All of those things really help this channel get found by other people, so we'd really appreciate the support. Thanks so much.